Hello, friends.
Hi, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
For our final in this series of freely given webinars. Thanks to all the people that have supported us and the people at Three Mountain Foundation who helped make this possible financially. And what an honor it's been. So today we want to, in a sense, summarize everything that we've shared and really look at what is ours to do, given everything in life, all the circumstances and all the different situations any of us can find ourselves in. And as with how we've begun each time, we like to make a gesture that we're calling upon our deepest levels of consciousness and the deeper energies that are available to all of us, and just kind of saying, we're stepping from just a secular conversation to a consecrated
The light within and the light without.
Exactly. And we will invite you. We're in a resonance. Kathy finds it clumsy to reach over to the computer, but we're reaching over to you. We're imagining people all over the world that are part of this circle, as if we were all gathered in a retreat, a transformational retreat. And I'm going to start with a piece of music by John Astin called Love, Serve, and Remember.
Why have you come to earth? Do you remember? Why have you taken birth? Why have you come to love, to serve and remember, to love, to serve and remember, love. Why have you come to earth? Do you remember? Why have you taken birth? Why have you come to love, to serve and remember, to love, to serve and remember. Why have you come to earth? Do you remember? Why have you taken birth? Why have you come to love, to serve and remember, 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 love.
Very heartful song.
Mm. Yeah, I just love this song just for the sweet simplicity of it. And you know, in my 25 years of searching and turning myself inside out, and it really comes down to coming home to the heart. And what is there to do? Love, serve, and remember. That's why I love that song.
Hmm. What is ours to do?
Mm.
We both thought about that just as simply as we could. And we're going to discuss a few of the things that are really essential. The first is there's no magic bullet. There's no hanging out with the great enlightened people. That's a piece of it sometimes for a few. But it's only a piece. There's no experience that by itself will be sufficient to truly transform our lives. Whatever path we choose, yoga, all those paths, all valid, all with important contributions, we have to have a practice. We have to find our practice. We have to find ourselves in our practice.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing. Nobody can do this journey without some kind of practice. And what happens in the beginning is you hear that as, oh, I should, but I don't, and oh, something's, and so what you do then with a simple thought is you poison yourself a little bit in the moment with guilt or shame. And that's not the point. The point is, if you had no other practice than to stop any thought that causes that kind of momentary or enduring unhappiness in you, that would be a sufficient practice to take you into deep states of awakening. That by itself, to stop giving energy to any form of thinking that divides you or divides in yourself, toward yourself, divides you in yourself, gets projected, so you're divided in others. And we'll review, as part of today, very briefly, all of the things we talked about that are essential to understand what the foundation of such a practice is. And there's enormous diversity, but what is the foundation at the core of the methodology of every spiritual consciousness tradition? And we believe that what we've been sharing with you is that core in the way that we language it and the way that I live it and Kathy live it. And we live it and process in different ways, but we arrive at the same place. Another continuous aspect is to take your practice and bind it to relationships where you finally say to yourself, if I react, if I become muddy, if I become angry, I start blaming, if I withdraw, if I hide myself by pleasing and trying to fix everything for everyone, and I can become aware of that, I take 100% responsibility, 100% responsibility to stop that behavior. Nobody's responsible for threatening you. No, they can in a way, and certainly as children, and we talked about the adverse childhood events that leave in us a deep body and psychological memory.
Yeah, and you're not responsible for what happens to you, but you can take responsibility for whatever reactivity that creates in you. And the reason to do that is because it gives you power. Then you have the power to shift it. You can't change what happened to you, but what you have is now and the possibility of a different future, and one of healing and liberation.
And so you make that decision. I'm going to take 100% responsibility for my contraction, my reaction. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to go into the anger blaming mode. I'm not going to say you're the one that causes that, because that just keeps the cycle of misery going infinitely. It's going to stop with me. It's going to stop with each of us. We're responsible for a relationship to our fear. We're responsible to a relationship to our reactivity 100% responsible. And when you say to yourself, that is something I'll live by, that by itself is a sufficient practice, because it takes a lot of other things to make that real. It means that if I'm going to take 100% responsibility for my reactivity, that means I can hold the pain, the fear, the wound that's triggering my reactivity, that's threatening me and causing me to react. So that too means if I'm going to take 100% responsibility, I have learned a practice of being inward with myself and making a home to feel and heal all of these dark places. There's another corollary. The first time I ever heard this was Kathy, when she said, there's certain circumstances where you take more than 100% responsibility.
Yeah, there are times when we can take 200% responsibility. And in any encounter that is escalating or becoming a transactional argument, really the one with the more consciousness in that moment can take 200% responsibility in the conversation to de-escalate, and shift.
Yeah, to not add fuel to the fire. And the most important thing Kathy just said is, in that moment, if you're a little more grounded in yourself, if you have a little more presence of mind, a little more spaciousness, and it's not that you're superior because that's, because you do, because in another moment, maybe the other person does or other people do. In any situation, any context, if you're the one that for whatever reason has a deeper anchor in that core depth of yourself, then you take 200% responsibility to stop the escalation. There's nothing wrong with saying to yourself and even to another, whoops, I apologize, I'm sorry. This doesn't serve us. And you can always come back after you've deepened in yourselves and review the same situation from a place of non-reactivity and find your heart with each other. If you don't want that as part of your life, that kind of perpetual poisoning of transactional, my individualistic self and your individualistic self, then you have to choose to stop it moment by moment. And that too, those are fundamental practices. We have shared with you briefly a form of consecrated conversation that is a conversation that has a dedication. And we've called it counsel, as my mentors have called it. And our mentors, because we share a wonderful relationship with a friend, Jack Zimmerman, who wrote a book called Counsel, and brought that into schools over the period of the 70s and 60s, 70s, 80s, and still. So some form of practice for your relationship, for a relationship with friends, for a relationship with the significant other, if there's a significant other, where you sit down and you put your ears in your heart, which is a funny image, and you put your eyes in your heart, and as you say,
put your whole head in your heart.
I can just see how cute it would be with in a Pixar movie. Whoop. Oh, hi. Okay, I'm sorry I was that way. And so that a practice for relationship, to even be on the phone with your mother, and no agreement whatsoever to do counsel, but you put your ears in your heart, you put your eye, you put your head, your mind, right, ruling your anger and your blame and your regret and your guilt and your this. Oops, put your head here. The language of the heart is in the present moment. It's a deep intelligence that we feel, that we know. It connects us limitlessly. Okay, so we need that as a practice. And then finally, we need, in addition to those kinds of consciousness-related practices, something I understood a long, long, long time ago It flips our ordinary understanding of intelligence upside down because we are so proud of our intellect, of our so rational intelligence, our conceptual mind. And yet, as you've often pointed out, that's only maybe 5% of our intelligence.
It's a very limited band. But brilliant.
Yeah.
But brilliant.
So what is the most intelligent part of us? What tells you, this is not good for me? In an instant, your body. If you really live in your body, you can't say, you don't love me, because you'll realize the second you say that, you've just made yourself hurt or angry. Your body just, it doesn't lie, ever. And so it's in the body that the body says, now you're off balance. Now you're caught in an old form of activity, in a pattern that's limited and doesn't serve you. And to keep your body healthy, it needs exercise. Now, some people use exercise almost addictively to manage their emotions. And I got to tell you, if you're going through a difficult time in your life, if you're in a divorce, if it's been miserable, a separation that's heartbreaking, and you get out on your bicycle every day, a whole lot longer than you might need to, or you go running, or you go to the toughest yoga class you can where they heat it up to 100 and whatever degrees, if that's what you need, then go for it. But people who run every single day and do that every single day don't necessarily know how well they can manage very subtle and not so subtle places of feeling without that. It's not true for everybody. Some people, it is their meditation. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, but for many people, it's a form of self-avoidance. And it's, and there's all the rationale for why it's good, because it's, it's healthy. But actually, there's something even more healthy than exercise. And that is your diet. And just recently, a man I've been mentoring for years, very successful man, and a family man, and struggling with all of the things that life's about, right? And he's not feeling good. And finally, he's come to just to take a look in the mirror. I turned him on to a website called nutritionfacts.org. He told me in a text this morning that he's now listened to 50 of these little, very entertaining, they're never longer than maybe 4 or 5 minutes, entertaining, I can't remember the name of the doc, but it's a complete non-for-profit entity that reads all the published research, over 15,000 new publications, 150,000 new publications on nutrition every year. And they try to read as many of them they can. There's a whole team of people. And as they've grown, he donates everything from his books. There's a book called How Not to Die, How Not to Diet and Lose Weight and Get Healthier and Healthier. It turns out that if you are a whole food, plant-based person, not only are you contributing to decrease the carbon footprint tremendously, more significantly than if you put solar panels on your roof and drive an electric car. Your contribution, your individual contribution to helping the planet, just simply eat whole food and plant-based. And you need to be educated about how to do that well. And it's really, really simple. In my world, if it isn't science-based, if it isn't peer-reviewed science-based, if the people who are telling you about things are selling something, be very, very cautious. So take care of yourself, because it turns out a couch potato vegan is got a longer life expectancy than a person who eats the typical Western diet and exercises every single day. Not only longer life expectancy, but better life quality. And that's published and peer-reviewed. So those are things that you can do. Your relationship to yourself, your relationship to others and significant other, and you care for your body, and you determine that you're going to die as spaciously as you can, because we're all going to die. So just briefly, what is the whole heart of what we've been sharing with you? in the previous 5 webinars and in some of the other webinars we've done over the past year since COVID started. The most single, I don't know if Kathy would agree with this, but I think you will.
Maybe. We'll see.
We'll see. I believe the single most fundamental and essential insight that you have to start from and remember is that there is only now. There is only this present moment. And that the present moment is an abstract concept, but as a lived experience, that's when in our body we know that God is love. That's the deepest of all consciousness. And the closer and the more embodied you are and able to be in the present moment, that's how you take the 100% responsibility or the 200% responsibility. And you can't be in the present moment, even in the beautiful zone that you can touch in athletics, and even think your name and remember your mother and father in your childhood. And you're going to fall, you're going to miss the basketball shot, you can't. You disappear. Your self system, your me is gone in those flow states. But then when you can live that day after day in your kitchen, in your bathroom, in your relationships, in your job, in your car, so close to every breath, it's never far away. And noticing what your mind takes you to and what you might be running from in your body that's taking you into your mind. There you are. There's only now. And then we talked about...
I agree, by the way.
And that what happens in the now is a relationship. The now for us is sensation and perception. There is no thought. So thinking will never teach you the deeper realities, because when you're in the deeper realities, there's no thinking. Thinking points, at best, it points. And it can point very well, and that's what we've been doing here.
But there is deep knowing.
Yeah.
But it comes from a different place.
Yeah, and it can be completely obscured by the thinking mind. And we've talked about that. We talked about the porcupines can fly events where people believe impossible things and build rationales on top of that. They believe total falsehoods. So that kind of mind, that conceptual rational mind, has to start from something of heart, or it will lead us astray all the time. And it has, and it will continue to. So that fundamental insight. Then I'm asked Alan to throw up some of the slides very quickly. The slide of what it's like to be born and be a baby. Look at all those baby reaching out, listening, feeling, and so much coming in right in those first weeks and months. And then gradually, over years, okay, Alan, take that down. That's plenty long. Thanks. Over years, sometimes you may have heard the notion of attractors in chaos theory. Well, a baby in a certain sense is chaos, but it's raised by people who have created a self system, a me, you, past, future structure, subject, object, consciousness, and time. And here you see it. This is what I call the beginning of a mandala. The baby's at the center, and gradually it begins to have stories about itself, begins to remember and think of itself. And simultaneously, it says, oh, that's mother. It begins to learn words. It identifies people that are not itself. And it begins to have, layer upon layer of belief and judgment about others. So there's the me, you. And then when that is happening simultaneously, the baby will have a past and a future. It'll start to remember the past. And eventually, at 8 or 9 years old, all of us have created what we can call the self system, or the foundation of the self system you're going to build your whole life on. And the center of that is your belief that you are a separate entity, a separate self. That's the fundamental illusion that every human being reaches and every human being functions from and needs to. Okay, Alan, we'll take that away. We don't need to go to the next one quite yet. Okay. Eventually, what we do is we move from an assemblage point that is the me, the self system, to an assemblage point that is a relationship to me, a relationship to my beliefs about the past, my memory in my body of the past. And excuse me 1 second, I forgot to do something that I'm going to do now. I'm not sure how to do it now. I forgot to make it private, so noises are coming through. Okay, we can take that slide down. What we wanted to say to you is, everybody, when you assemble yourself at that age of 7, 8, 9, and now there's this enduring self system. You forget it every night when you go to bed, and you wake up every morning and it's there again. And parts of it you don't want to ever lose, like the ability to walk and dance or paint or sing, the understanding of words, that you look out a window and you know it's a window and you know you're looking out. I mean, all of that part of the self system is important. It's the psychological part of the self system. In those 8 or 9 years, we learn, first of all, most of all, anything it takes to make us feel secure. And we do that by being aggressive, rebellious. That's the basic pattern for some people, or other people, it's to be a fixer and a pleaser. You take care of everybody. We do it. That's again about security. Or we do it by learning. We go into our own secret world. We withdraw, we hide. And so those basic things, security, a kind of personal power, and control, those dynamics, that's the foundation of me. And it's always going to be my control issues or my power issues or my security issues in that transactional relationship that I'm dancing with anybody else until the aware self takes over. And for the aware self to take over, you need a practice like meditation, but body-centered meditation. Because when the body is happy, the feeling nature becomes calm, positive, and the mind becomes calm. That's what I meant before. The body's the most intelligent, longest, we can argue it's been since the foundation of the beginning of this universe. Our consciousness is an endpoint of all that evolution. And the evolution of these organisms to take birth. Why have you come to earth? To love, serve, and remember. The notion of the gift and privilege of taking birth on this planet, of which we know no other yet, even remotely like it. The body, when it's really happy, everything falls into place. When we make our peace with the threatening feelings, everything begins to fall into place. And then the mind becomes the ally. The ego self becomes the ally of our journey into deeper consciousness. The assemblage points becomes awareness, a relationship to the feelings, a relationship to the beliefs. And if you don't have a relationship to your beliefs and thinking, that's the limit of your consciousness. You're only as enlightened as the feelings you can hold and heal. As soon as you meet a feeling you can't hold, you will go off into thinking and endless justification and endless rationalization. Endless. Everybody will do that. It becomes political beliefs. It becomes activism or non-activism. It becomes everything. If you're identified with anything, that's the limit of your relation, your enlightenment.
And I just want to add that it's important to remember that it's a process. And that shift from the assemblage point of me to that aware self, it happens over time, and it happens with work, with the inner work that you do. And that's where really our life becomes the practice. And it's slowly, we, through practice, through really looking deeply and addressing whatever is blocking your heart, whatever is creating that self system, and a willingness to look at that and have a relationship with that, that is what creates the shift. And so we anchor more and more in that aware self. And as you said, then the ego becomes the servant of that greater awareness, because we need a self. We need our egos. It's just a limited band, and suffers a lot.
Just like the Buddha said, the first noble truth, at the level of the ego, life will be continuous dissatisfaction and some form of suffering. The reason, the second noble truth, because you believe there is a separate self. The third noble truth is that if you begin to develop awareness and begin to let yourself study what it is that gives you this idea of separateness, what are your beliefs? What are your thoughts? What are the feelings that don't have a home in you yet? That can lead to freedom and liberation. And the fourth noble truth is that if you practice that deeply enough and stabilize yourself in that, you wake up into a more or less continuous state of awakeness. Now, some people wake up, as Kathy said, very gradually. I think it's true for everyone. There are also moments with this deep awakening activates. And often it comes out of tremendous turmoil. And we made the joke in one of the webinars about Golden Gate Bridge seminars. Mm-hmm. 100% transformation, 2% survival. Only 1 in 50 people that jump off that big high bridge in San Francisco live. But if they do, they're all changed in 2.5 seconds. They didn't want to live anymore. Think of the despair, the anguish, the beliefs, the repeated stories, thousands and thousands and thousands of times, until the groove seems to be so permanently done in the brain that you'll hear neuropsychologists say, oh, the brain is laid down in this. And 2.5 seconds later, the brain is different. The whole consciousness is different, and the brain becomes obedient to that new consciousness. So there is turmoil and deep struggle, but if you have a practice, then that turmoil and deep struggle can actualize, as we said at the beginning, post-traumatic growth, mm-hmm. directly in proportion to the support you get after trauma. And the more severe the trauma, the potential for the greatest amount of transformation and growth. And that's wonderful news. But again, like I said at the beginning, if we don't do it, it won't happen. And then the question of why, because you were talking about it is gradual, mm-hmm. but it made me think, but why do we do that? And I know the answer for me. First, you start with suffering. You don't want to suffer. Or something snaps you into wakefulness, maybe out of trauma or turmoil or getting hit by a lightning bolt, like happened to me when I was, I think, 5 days past my 30th birthday. But still, there was turmoil before that, and there was turmoil afterwards.
Yes, because the ego survives enlightenment. It's
humility.
As you say, like, in that moment, you were really changed, like fundamentally changed, but the ego was still there.
It was longer than a moment, but it was, I guess in a lifetime, it was a moment.
Mm-hmm. But again, it's and that's the work is as you like to say, digesting Richard,
the separate
self,
the psychological ego structure that's based on security and power and control, the self system of every single human being, more or less, by the age of 7, 8, 9. Mm-hmm. And it's necessary. I wrote a book, and recently someone wrote to me, loving this book, which hasn't, it's not even published anymore. I came out, I don't know, maybe around 2000. No, probably, maybe 1998. The Second Miracle. But I called it The Second Miracle. But the first miracle was the self system. It was me, the separate mm-hmm. self. First that, otherwise no enlightenment. The baby may be enlightened, but it doesn't know it.
And that's the whole point too, that, this transition through birth to the time where our ego consolidates and is when we're in our being, unless there's a lot of trauma and aces in your life. We're really, for the most part, in our being. It's just we're not aware of it. Like a child is when it's playing and it's in a flow, they're in their being, and that it's a natural state of being, of flow, of presence. But then slowly, we begin to lose connection. And I love, my dad said to me once that the true definition of original sin is not that we're born sinners. Original sin is actually disconnect from God. And I think that's what really happens around that time, typically, is as the ego consolidates, we lose our connection to source being. And I saw it happen with one of my children, and she was about 7, we were driving along, and she was in her car seat, and she said, Mom, how do you forget something? And I immediately thought, oh my gosh, something bad happened and she wants to forget. So I said, oh, why? Did something bad happen? And she was like, no, I don't know how I could forget when I was so happy. And then I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is happening. This is, she's losing her connection, because I knew that. I didn't know it for my first 2, but I was aware of it, with her. And then we could talk about different things. And
yeah, you took her on a shamanic journey to teach her how to.
Yeah,
it's a long story, but it's wonderful.
Yeah, well, actually, she asked me one night, we were lying in bed, she's like, what do you do when you meditate? 7. And so I explained to her, and
that's 14 years ago.
And I said, so, would you like to do some earth breathing? And so she said yes. And so I took her on a guided meditation, and she said, well, how do I get to lower world, which is a shamanic concept? So,
which she must have heard you say.
Yeah. And I was practicing shamanism at the time. And so I took her on a journey, and she came, she went to lower world, came back. Anyway, about a month later, we're lying in bed again. I said, well, do you want to do some earth breathing? She was like, Mom, I'm only 7. And, but I think what happened was that she wanted to know that there was a way back. And when she realized that, it was like she could relax and just go back to being a kid.
And, we talk about self-remembering. Gurdjieff talked about it as a base self-remembering. So the child is in the self, but it's undifferentiated. So there's no remembering. Once there's remembering, we're so differentiated, we've forgotten. So we have to move in this arc of transformation as the assemblage point goes from me, the ego self, and it's the transactional me, the separate self, and it starts to move into presencing, being in the body, awareness, which is presencing, being present. And then gradually you digest whatever isn't in service to love. All the way from the beginning of my work, I would use the word consecration. And I was using it before I fully understood, really for myself, what it was. I knew that you didn't do meditation and yoga and any of those things without it being consecrated or dedicated to something. Dedicated is a good word, but consecrated comes from the word consecrare, to make sacred. Mm. And what is it that makes my life sacred? Mm. It's when everything I do is in service to something like love. And we know that our relationship, in its intelligence, and all relationship, truly all relationship, is trying to lead us all to higher consciousness, or all to God. Or if you have trouble with those words, then to love, because everybody understands love in some way, though they may not ever use an expression like higher self, or awakened self, or enlightened, aware self. In the mandala being, I called this 7, 8, 9 stage of the first miracle basically lower self-functioning. It's self-functioning for the purpose of security and power and control. Mm. And higher self functioning is whatever we do in service to love. And when you realize that love's been calling you all your life, if you look at your life and you look at what was most important, it will be the times where love presenced. Wherever it presenced, however it presenced. So that's the summary. And then it really comes down to practice, practice, practice. And to design your own. I say to people who do hatha yoga, I say, yeah, go ahead. It's great that you're practicing these asanas and you're getting better and better at them. But your life is the asana, right? And someone made up all those postures. Maybe because they were poor and lived in a small hut. Maybe because there was a tremendous ascetic tradition of solitude and people needed to get exercise if they were in a cave or, I don't know. But the point is, the deeper aspect of yoga is not the posture, it's the consciousness in the posture. Are you pushing the body? Are you not quite reaching what it can do? The midpoint. So, the asana is your life. And your aware self has many names. Higher self, true self, source, God, man of light, witness.
Point of light.
Point of light. Better point of light because
Buddha nature.
Buddha nature, person of light. I know, I'm just getting into the man, woman of light.
That's Sufis.
Yeah, point of light. Okay, friends. And today, Kathy, because it's so crucial, you're only as enlightened as the feelings you can hold. They will chase you into thinking and justification, self-protective mentalizing, if you can't hold them. So the journey in the body is, meditation isn't about peace. Meditation is about bringing peace to whatever is not at peace in you until it's peace. So, yeah, you want to have that quiet time in the morning for 20 minutes. Oh, God, okay, I need, that's just the beginning. You want to sit down, get quiet, ground yourself, and then say, okay, I didn't get angry at my kids or my wife or myself or blah, 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 because I'm peaceful and calm and enlightened. I got angry because there's something here I haven't made a peace with. So all practice is in the body. All meditation ultimately is in the body.
Yeah, and for me, what's been really critical is, and through the practice of meditation, of really grounding, of being able to relax into the basic ground that is always here, always supporting us. Like Trungpa said one time, the reason we meditate is so that when the world pulls the rug out from under us, we have a ground to stand on. So this is the ground that we're learning to anchor into when we practice. And the deeper those roots are, the more capacity you have to stay present and to really stay present and have a relationship with sometimes sensations that can be overwhelming and painful, traumatic, especially if you're dealing with any of the ACEs that you may have experienced in life. And
just to redefine it again, adverse childhood experiences.
Yeah, that we
ACEs.
talked about in a previous webinar. But in order to really begin to have a capacity for a relationship with those strong sensations, those things that are really kind of buried deep in the unconscious, we really need to build that muscle, build that muscle of witnessing and anchoring and staying present. And in that way, we can, in my experience, we can find our deepest healing. And even for, some of the worst traumas, there, again, we talked about the capacity for post-traumatic growth, it can be the doorway to your freedom, to your fullness, to really your being. And it's not an easy path.
Yeah. Awakening can start with panic attacks.
Mm-hmm.
It can start with something in a dream that starts to cause you to sweat and have heart palpitations and fall into seeming unrelenting anxiety. It can start that way because something was buried long ago. And now it comes out because you're ready. And so what was a panic attack and just the most devastating anxiety 10 years ago or 5 years ago can become spaciousness and light 5 years later. It can become that almost instantaneously, but not enduringly. You can snap into wakefulness. But if we're to endure, you visit that feeling, and gradually it goes from panic attack to disturbance, to discomfort, to spaciousness. So let's drop in together. Let's spend the next 25 minutes or so really, again, just sensing foundation of the practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it requires a deep connection and relationship with the body. So, and through meditation, we can build that muscle. So, okay, so feeling your feet on the floor, wherever you are, finding a comfortable posture, and closing your eyes. And in closing your eyes, you're turning your gaze inward into your interior landscape, into your inner world. And now bringing your awareness to your breath, just joining with the breath. And taking a few deep cleansing breaths. And when we join with the breath, when we presence with the breath, there's an immediate spaciousness that you can sense, and a relaxation of the body. So before doing any really deep work, the first thing is really relaxing as much as you can, dropping in, connecting with being, connecting with that groundless ground that is always present. It's our awareness that disconnects.
Our separate self-awareness, that self-system that we've been talking about.
So presencing and tuning in to your interior space, the interior of your body. And now placing your awareness at the soles of your feet and opening up a clear channel, say to the center of the earth, up through the body. And on the inhale, pulling the energy up from the earth and your awareness traveling with the breath as it rises through the body and crests at the top of the head. And then the exhale traveling down through the body and out through the soles of the feet. So taking a few minutes to find your rhythm with the wave of your breath. Like a wave coming in from the ocean, cresting on the shore, cresting at the top of the head. And then the wave receding back down through the body, like the wave receding back into the ocean. And as your awareness travels up through the body on the in-breath, just noticing, really deeply tuning in to the interior of the body. Noticing any place of tension or holding, discomfort. And on the exhale, just inviting yourself to relax, release, giving yourself these few minutes to just let go. It's like that moment just before we drop into sleep. The body relaxes, lets go. Only this time our awareness is fully present. Seeking refuge in our being, seeking refuge in this basic ground. Presencing, relaxing. You may notice sensations like tingling, or an expansion of your inner space. Relaxing, gently breathing. You may even lose any sense of the boundary of the body, just open space. alive, awake. And there's no arrival, just a constant deepening into love, life. Or if you find yourself on a train of thought, just very gently noticing that and bringing yourself back to this breath, back to this moment, this now. And this is the deep anchor that we can build, like the deep roots of a tree, anchoring into this ground. So when the winds of strong emotion blow or body pain comes, we can stay grounded and meet whatever's here.
Meet whatever's here gently. And then if you think you're meeting it gently, imagine meeting it more gently. And if you think you're now really in the stillness of the softest touch, there's an even softer touch.
The very nature of this ground, the very nature of this awareness is infinite love and compassion. And it's with this loving awareness, this compassionate awareness, that we can meet whatever pain, whatever trauma you may have experienced, whatever those sensations that we don't want to feel. Bringing the light of your awareness to these places that have been buried, dark, unwanted. These places of suffering. you bring the light of your loving, compassionate awareness to these places, meeting them, breathing gently, with whatever presents. A broken heart, turning toward it, just gently breathing in with the most loving touch. Breath by breath. It's how the deep healing happens. The traumatized child within. This awareness can be the loving mother that maybe you didn't have because she was so wounded. And in this way, you can mother these parts of yourself, or be the loving, supportive, compassionate father to these parts of ourselves.
We live in this world and we see so much fear, so much violence, distrust, words like racism and prejudice. And where does that start? It starts inside of us in a structure that's based on security and control and power, and is unable to embrace a sense of being unsafe as a sensation. So it gets projected, and you're why I don't feel safe, something outside. The otherness of our own sensations of unsafety and fear gets projected and becomes the other outside that we fear and attack or diminish. Anything that makes us feel the sensation of being out of control is unwanted, but it's just a sensation. Just a sensation in the now, to be held softly and then more softly. And to feel powerless is a sensation. If you won't let yourself feel it, then you will try to find power over yourself through addiction, workaholism, anything, to keep the continuity of a system that gives you some sense of structure. And yet all of that loss of structure is just a sensation in the now. Not to be reviled, but to be reparented, held and felt and healed. The otherness outside of us is born of sensations inside of us that we don't hold, don't let ourselves feel. And all of the thinking and rationalization and justification is just the mind operating from a disconnect. A disconnect from the heart where everything can be felt and must be felt. And when you can let yourself feel these things and they become less threatening, less a sense of being out of control, less a sense of being unsafe, less a sense of being disempowered, you now have power. That power over and this is why fear is love's ally. Because whatever you make peace with that you're afraid of brings you into the realm of love that was always there. Just make a covenant with yourself. Maybe not while you're reacting, but that later you'll sit down, not to have peace, to escape the reaction, but to quiet yourself and ground in your breath, come into your body, and then say, okay, what is it that I couldn't feel in that moment that made me react? And find it and hold it softly. You'll become aware that when your words come too fast, you've lost the ground in your body and in your heart. Too many words, proof. Gradually you'll sit right at the center. Here am I. A soft current of well-being. A living presence. When you wake up in the morning, we all condense instantly back into the self system. Wake up and know that this is the self system that is now your instrument to choose practice, to come home to yourself and make love. Generate love. Perceive with love. Touch with love. When you condense back into the self system that's feeling a little threatened, and it starts to talk faster and louder, listen to what's happening in your body. Hear the speed of the words, the kind of moving up into the head of the voice, and find what you're running from and give it a home. What is ours to do? This is what is ours to do. We go to sleep at night, we forget our self system, but the body breathes. So we wake up in the morning and we remember. Put a little bit of our awareness in what is deeper than the self system. Join the breath, feel it. There again, immediately, the spaciousness that is the very essence of the ground.
So very gently begin to come back to the space, feeling your feet, feeling your hands, opening your eyes. Here I am. Here we are.
If you feel insufficient in any way, look for whatever you believe about yourself, the stories. They're not true. At the center, we always are already sufficient and always have been. So feel the sensation that becomes the story, I'm not good enough. Becomes somehow this subtle belief, something's wrong with me.
Or maybe there's a feeling of nothing. It's just, I don't feel anything, I feel nothing. That's a sensation. Feel that. That's the path, that's the journey. Layer after layer, sensation after sensation.
Yeah. It's the mind trying to understand something and says, I feel nothing. But that's impossible. It's impossible. So start with whatever nothing is. Just like Kathy said.
Nothing is a sensation.
That's been labeled by the mind. Nothing. All right, friends. We have Christian with us. I think he's been looking at the chat or the stream. Not that there's been a whole lot of time to write, but if you want to put something in now that we can join. We were astonished at how many questions came recently.
Or the Spanish webinar.
Yeah, we were doing a English-Spanish webinar last Wednesday night here, Wednesday evening. So many questions, and they were great. We answered them the following week.
Yeah, what I really miss about not being able to be in person is that we can really interact with you. And so whenever you have a question or struggling with some process, then we can really engage.
But not only the struggle, just the sweetness of things in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I think when we put our emphasis on questions, we forget to emphasize what we actually understand. That is, not with our heads, but in the immediacy of what we feel. There's, as you said earlier, inner knowing.
Mm-hmm.
Activation of inner knowing. So what's going on?
Yes, so we have actually one question which relates to, I think, what you were just saying, Richard. And the question is, how to be with somebody who is very reactive?
That is one of the most frequently asked questions. If you're with someone who's very reactive, they're your teacher. I'm sure my wife's going to say something.
Well, I mean, and also, if someone triggers you and you get reactive, that is your teacher too. And in that way, that's the way life is, the practice. But whenever I'm with someone who's really reactive, I just go deeper into my heart, deeper into the ground. Can I hold this space of reactivity with love and compassion? And usually something changes. I don't know, what's your experience when someone's super reactive?
Well, what I imagine the question comes from is a relationship. And in it, one partner is very reactive. Mm-hmm. And you didn't know that, but now you're together and suddenly you're dealing with this maybe aggressiveness. When you can hold that and your reaction to it with love and compassion, you may not need that relationship anymore. So then the flip side becomes, oh my God, if I really don't need this relationship, am I going to be alone? And then comes fear. So people are sandwiched between, it's so unpleasant, this relationship, but if I let go of it, fear. And again, so learn to hold the fear. And if you do outgrow a relationship, the next one comes in to give you a much deeper teaching in which you can maybe share together the path of loving love. But if you have no choice because this is one of your children, or it's a parent, and you don't really have a choice, they're going to be part of your life and there's no point in cutting them out, then you find the balance for yourself, the limit that's valid for you. That limit will just be still something you yourself haven't learned to hold. And we're not meant to be, I believe we're meant to share love with each other and to make love, not just procreate. That's a beautiful part of life, to have children and that form of love. And the social roles and social norms of husbanding and mothering and being a father and a mother, husband and a wife. But we're here to make love. We live long enough now that having fulfilled the biological imperative, we can start to fulfill love's imperative. So whoever it is that's in front of you, they're your teacher if you react, if you complain.
And also there comes a point, at least in my life, where whenever I'm with someone who's super reactive, I can trace the reactivity back to the wound. It's like you see the wound from where that reactivity comes, and just compassion arises. It's having compassion for that wounded part of themselves that creates this aggression or strong reactivity. And
you can have compassion and also say enough.
Yeah, that's true too.
You can have compassion and say, I'm moving on. You never have to close your heart to choose the possibility of deeper love. Love with yourself if there's a time or a period of aloneness. But you never have to close your heart to the possibility that love will gift you with a companionship or forms of companionship in which that love can grow. There's so many different dimensions and richnesses of relationship consecrated to love. And this is what is ours to do. It's in relationship that our journey of consciousness, we have an expression, the rubber meets the road, but which probably many of you will know. Where does the rubber meet the road? Where's the friction? Where's the power to start the car rolling? It's in relationships. And it starts with our relationship to ourselves. I reached a point in my life where I basically said that any belief, any thought whatsoever that caused me to contract even this much, like the thought about what I need to do for myself or I should be doing, or how to take care of myself better, if it wasn't a statement, I will take care of myself better and this is how I'll do it, then I let that thought go. Until less and less does the mind have the power to close the heart. And we start all over again because it's always now. So before we close today, and we have a piece of music for that,
Yeah.
Is there a little bit more you want to bring forward from what came through, Christian?
Yes, for one thing, there are many expressions just of gratitude and thank yous for having this opportunity And somebody says it's so wonderfully insightful and generous. And also somebody says, that's a sharing, a nice sharing. As you row your boat gently down the stream of life, be aware of the melodrama fishes on the bank, trying to capture you with their hooks and drag you ashore.
Beautiful. Beautiful. We feel that we've done everything we know how to do with words and diagrams. There are things we would have done to bring this deeper in the body if we were on an actual retreat together. And we look forward to the time when we can be with you that way. I got my first injection of vaccine yesterday, and sooner or later, a lot of us will, and we'll all find our way to recover, however we've been impacted economically. And it'll be time to come together to do the work collectively in a living space, because we can go deeper. But these things that we've shared, we know that this can be a legacy, that it'll be just as true 100 years from now or 500 years from now as it is now. And I'm not talking about the things that we know are our personal perspective or our personal point of view. The things we're teaching you about this journey are not point of view. They are actually lived experience. And we know there's no limit, and it doesn't ever end. And so I have a prayer. We'll see some of you in the future physically really get a chance to go into the art of transformation as we share it. And we hope that the experience of a teaching that emerges out of a third consciousness, a path that we've chosen profoundly, not just a teaching from a man or a teaching from a woman, but two people in third consciousness, that this shows you that from yourself, then into relationship, and from your relationship into the world, from all of your relationships into the world. And let's close with a piece of music we're pretty sure everybody knows. Blessings to you all. It's been an honor. Thank you. Thank you.